If you can connect the investment to a dream, you're far more likely to sit down and read up and study and research everything. Just look into a couple of them. That will be good enough. You will be far better, way further ahead than all the other people who said, well, I have to get a perfect investment. You can't have everything be a sacred cow. So tell me what you're willing to let go of for this season. What if we could do that on a large scale?
Welcome back, investor, to another episode of Passive Income Adventures. This is the show where we talk about all things entrepreneurship, personal finance, investing, lifestyle design, basically getting your time back so that you can play more with the people who are most important to you, so that you can give more to your community through philanthropy and volunteering, and just so you can get control of your life and have your best intentions line up with your actual reality. And we help you figure out how to pay for all of these adventures on the show. So today we have Alyssa Wolf from Unbusy. She is a work-life balance coach, basically time management for busy people, how to get everything done. And so, Alyssa, this is why I wanted you on, because the biggest excuse that I hear from our investors, I don't have time to figure all this stuff out. So I'm really hoping you can shed some light, especially for moms, but for families in general, on how to get control of their time so they can work on what's really important to them and not get stuck in all the things that are not that important. So thank you for being on today.
Thanks so much, Emma.
Yeah, so where are you calling in from?
I'm from Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Yes, a great place to invest. Honestly, like Tulsa, Oklahoma City for real estate, really nice place to invest, but I haven't been there in many years. Can you give us a little bit about your background? Just give us your bio, your introduction, how you got into this type of business.
Sure. So I've got 5 kids. So fundamentally, I'm a stay-at-home homeschooling mom. And I started in that straight out of college because I was like, I don't know what job would fit me best. Not for want of trying through all the majors. So I better just get started on the running a family side of things. But I spent 13 years going, what kind of purpose? Like, how am I going to give back to the world? I still want this. Like, where is it? When is it coming? And then I finally heard about online. And then it's, I can stay home. I do not want to drive. I don't want to commute. That sounds soul sucking. And I can still transform other women's lives. This would be great. And then what could I help people with? Was time management, because I have never been frazzled, basically. And I have five. So people look at me if I take them to the grocery store. Oh, bless your heart. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, I like my life. Let me tell you.
Yes. I remember one time we were walking into Home Depot and I had four of my daughters with me and they were all trailing after us, a little string of ducks.
Mhm.
And this older couple walked by and you heard one whisper to the other one, four daughters. And I turned around, I said, I actually have five daughters and a son back at home. And they were just like, I thought people who haven't done it really have no concept on how it's done. And I said to a friend of mine, she was pregnant with her 11th child. And I said to her one day, I said, I don't know how you do it with 11. I can barely handle, I think I had five at the time. I could barely handle it with five. And she just looked at me and she said, do you hear what you just said? She goes, how many people with two or three kids have told you they don't know how you do it because they can barely handle their three? She said, you just do it.
It's always so funny. And then these days, I usually only take 2 or 3 to the grocery store because some of mine are older. And then people are like, oh, wow, these all your kids are so nice. Oh, no, these are only the middle ones. We want to hear who else.
My oldest is home with the baby.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's so fun to see people's reactions, but it does make me wonder sometimes. My kids even will ask me, like, why did you have so many kids? And I think there are a lot of answers for that. But pertinent to the show, one of the reasons I think I had so many kids is so I had an excuse to be frazzled, if that makes sense. Because I'm frazzled naturally. I run hot. I have anxiety. I'm disorganized, a little bit chaotic. I mean, maybe I shouldn't be telling people this on my show. Let me manage your money for you. But I tend to be frazzled. And so I was trying to get my lifestyle to justify my level of frazzledness, if that's a word. And I think that having a lot of kids gave me a pass for many years on being a little bit frazzled and disorganized until it got to the point where I really was frazzled and disorganized and I had to make some major changes. So, what led you into, first of all, having five kids? It's unusual in this day and age. And then also homeschooling, which people think homeschooling big families is crazy, but honestly, I think it's easier. But anyway, tell me how you came to this lifestyle.
Yeah. Number of kids. When I was growing up, any friends I had who came from larger families, I only have one other sibling, they said they, so I was like, okay, note to self, learn from other people's experiences. If I have a bunch of kids, they will all have a ton of siblings they'll enjoy playing. Ideal perspective, of course. So that's how I went into it as a teen, thinking if I, as the mother, could handle the stress, frazzle, time management, organization aspect of running a large household, I think it would be good for them and I would like to try it. So I had the moment once I had my first two kids. Okay, I could stop here. Life would be so easy. I see that stretching out in front of me. Or do I want to go for more? Do I feel like I could take that? I haven't tapped. I'm good. All right, we'll keep going for more. And my husband was like, okay, you do realize eventually that unless you want to learn how to drive a 50-passenger van, which will not fit in our garage, you got to stop. Oh, I never meant a non-standard vehicle size. Yes, honey, absolutely. We can stop.
Oh boy. When my oldest was a baby, I think she was maybe 18 months, something like that. My next door neighbor came and knocked on my door. So I just only had the one. And he said, hey, my wife drives the bus for my karate school and she has an emergency today. He said, could you come and make the round to the elementary school kids and pick up the kids from karate school? And I was like, sure, why not? He goes, I'll pay you $25 or whatever he was going to pay me. And so I went and I drove the bus and he kept asking me, like, finally he was like, "Hey, I need to add you to our insurance. You drive the bus for us so often. And to add you to the insurance, you need to go get a passenger CDL." And I'm like, oh, wow. I don't really want to be driving a bus. It's easy money. I could bring my daughter with me and then we'd stay after and take a karate class. And so for, I don't even know how long, maybe 2 years, I drove this bus for the karate school for my next door neighbor. And I remember thinking when we had a bunch more children, like, I could handle a 15 passenger. Like, I grew up in a family of 8 kids. I'm like, I could parallel park an 80 passenger school bus. And so for me, it was funny because I felt like I could do that. But we ended up buying an 8 passenger minivan. And I was like, I don't want any more kids because you can only fit 6 kids in this car. And I decided I don't actually want this, even though this bus driving background, I don't know if I've ever told that story before. I used to be a driver.
That's so fun. Yeah, and then the homeschooling, I'm homeschooled, my husband was homeschooled, so both of our mothers would have had a fit if I had done anything else.
What kind of led you to homeschooling? Because I know with me, it got so hard to have so many kids in school because any parent out there can understand how much work it is to have a kid in school because you've got homework, you got lunch, you got forms you need to fill out, field trips, volunteering. Like it's a lot to have, especially in elementary school, to have kids. And I just had the point where I was like, every single kid is a part time job in school. And if I can consolidate this, it would actually take me less time. So for me, homeschool was a form of time management. It was also just because I was getting tired of everybody telling me what to do, like how to educate these children and basically telling me everything I was doing was wrong. And that was really tough because I felt like I was very intentional about the way I was raising my kids and to have a bunch of public educators telling me I was doing it wrong. And I just was butting heads with the administration and the teachers a lot. And so I figured I don't have time for this. And for me, homeschooling was actually a way to save time. Was that the same for you or how did that come about?
Like I said, I'm a homeschooler, my husband is as well. So we were raised each with, and the expectation is you will go and homeschool your own kids. Just go bug us, we'll help you.
Yes.
And then my mother gave me the rundown when my oldest was 4. It's okay. You can't screw up kindergarten. If
Yeah.
by some strange way you truly do, the public school is happy to take her and this will be okay. And then I developed my own philosophy of, "Well, but let's strip it down back to the basics. Don't
Mhm.
view this as the look how good a mom I am. Look how many things I can teach the kid. Look how wonderfully
Right.
accomplished all
That's
my children can
terrible.
be."
Yeah.
And as
And
you said, it takes my less time. So I'm like, look, kids, you will double your time if you go to school. Now, quit whining. Buckle down and get those subjects done so you can go start playing.
exactly. I like that. We could probably analogize that time saving in general because when I first started, I was a little nervous about the amount of time I was taking. So I adopted first a 3 hours approach where it's a reading, writing, and arithmetic. And then our reading and our writing would encompass the other subjects like social studies, science, that kind of stuff. And it worked out really well for a few years. My son has autism and he was very resistant to any kind of structure, routine. So I really had to change for him. And then we got more towards the unschooling and even the radical unschooling where, okay, if we're not going to force him to do schoolwork, why do I need to force him to eat this particular food or go to bed on this particular time? And so as we started to strip it back more to the bare bones, I realized, oh, this should have been where I started. And then just adding in one thing at a time. If this isn't working, we can always add stuff back. But it's hard to take stuff away after you commit. So I definitely think that's a time management analogy there for going back to basics and figuring out what's most important. I don't know. Talk more about that.
Yeah, no, so many commonalities. I was like reading, writing, arithmetic. We can get all this other stuff later, like middle school, high school, focus on the basics for a reason. And then we got some neurodivergencies. And then it's like, then I learned about unschooling. And all the things as well. So we very much shifted our homeschooling approach based on what I grew up with was this school in a box is just you do it at home and it takes
Mhm.
half the time. But what does each individual child need? What are their giftings? Again, you have to work around the autism and this and that. And then running into unschooling when my oldest two are high school and everybody else is farther down the line meant I had to shake up everything again for all that college and career planning for them. And the trickle down effect, of course, of all right, how do we unschool younger ones? Because the older ones, I was like, great, they already know their reading, writing, and arithmetic. So I don't have to worry anymore. Like it's on them. And the younger ones, I'm like,
Yes.
but you don't know how to read yet. I'm
Yes.
concerned.
I think these kinds of concepts that we're talking about, it was amazing to me when I started investing or started my real estate business. Then we became full-time investors where we're not running the properties so much anymore. We're just more running the portfolio. And so many of these lessons that I got from being a stay-at-home mom, for being a homeschool mom, and for being a business owning mom translated directly over to my ability to be able to invest successfully. And that kind of surprised me because I think in our culture, on the one hand, we're like, moms, they're so wonderful. But on the other hand, in college, they call it the MRS degree.
Oh, yes.
And so these skills became so important in my later business success. And so that's one of the things I really wanted to have you on the show for was to talk about how to translate the things that we're learning in the home into, like you said, that broader calling. So we are focusing first on having a successful family and doing a great job of creating responsible adults to put out in the world, right? But then expanding that vision out and using those same skill sets. Have you found these kinds of things in particular to be helping you in your business or as you're managing your own investing portfolio?
I think it was almost the other way around for me. I
Mhm.
started with kids pretty young. So I took that same approach that I learned of like high achieving, go getter, stress yourself out, hit all the things, and did that with parenting. And so it was only when I hit like late 20s and early 30s, I started realizing I need to calm my nervous system down. I need to be gentler on myself. And of course, I was applying that directly to the business, into my task list there, and to how worked up I was feeling about
Mhm.
results. And then I was like, oh, but it makes sense. If my kid doesn't put in the laundry at the time they're supposed to, shouldn't I be gentle and down? Isn't that just a to do that's on the household side? Aren't I supposed to be training them almost like an employee in the business? So it then trickled over to the parenting. But
Okay.
first, it came on the business side for me.
That's actually interesting because I remember when I very first got married, I decided I wanted to get a business degree. And what was the first class I took after we got married was a business class. And it was a management class. And there was so much that he would be talking about in the textbook. And I'd be like, oh, that's like when you're talking to your husband and you have this. And I realized business management is just relationship management, just like parenting, just a marriage. And so for me, the business education leaked over into the personal as well, but because I hadn't actually started a business yet, I hadn't even finished college yet, I didn't really have anything to hang it on for my business experience. I could only hang it on the relationships that I already had. And that became a foundation of my homeschool as well. I want to give my kids a lot of experiences. So when they come across concepts, they can then hang that concept onto the hard experience that they've had. And that was directly a result of combining both business and being a homeschool or stay at home mom.
That's a great why for the parenting and the travel lifestyle.
Yeah, it all goes together. Communication and relationship management is all it's just that
Everything.
business, right? Yeah. Let's look into some of the things that you mentioned at the beginning that intrigued me. I didn't ever feel frazzled. I take 5 kids to the grocery store. And so we don't want to say, oh, Alyssa never gets overwhelmed or Alyssa never gets stressed out. That's not what we're trying to say. But it's like talk about some of the coping mechanisms that you have to keep that stuff at bay and keep the general level or the default level at calm and serene as much as possible.
So even before I realized I was strongly introverted, highly sensitive, all that sort of thing, I had decided, okay, I like quiet, I like tidiness, I like order. That's the way I'm going to run my house.
Mhm.
Get the first baby, and I still want to do it that way. And then I started implementing nap time as quiet time for myself.
Yes.
So I get the 2 hours in the middle of the afternoon or however long she's going to sleep. And I get it. I like no housework, just read books. Reading's my top hobby. And then the more kids I had, I just kept adding on to that. Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't care if you don't nap anymore. Go be in your room. Don't share anything with your sibling. Close the door. Have some space and quiet to yourself. We have a lot of introverts in the family. And the ones who are actually sleeping will take naps. Oh, you are sharing a room. Great. Why don't you go to the laundry room and close the door? Here, you can sit in our closet and close the door. Whatever it took. So when you have 2 to 3 hours every single day, in the middle of the day, not way at the end when you're exhausted, it's way easier to not live from that state of frazzle. So that was like my number one mom hack of littles that I
Mhm.
just keep going to this day.
Nice. Yeah. I told my husband recently, I said, one thing I regret not doing when our kids were really little, and one thing I'm going to do for my kids when they first start having their own children is every family is getting a gym membership that has a daycare for very young babies. And you're going to go for 2 hours a day. And I don't care if you sit next to the pool and read. I don't care if you take an exercise class or lift weights or you literally just sit in your car and cry. But
Mhm,
go to the gym every day for 2 hours in the mornings or whatever and just take a shower by yourself, like all of these kinds of things. I love my kids. Obviously, I had so many of them and I love spending time with my kids. I will prioritize that over just about everything else, above housework, above business, above everything. That perfect example, last week, we actually had this podcast scheduled, but I was driving up to Idaho for a business meeting the night before we were supposed to record. And the next day I texted my daughter and I said, "Hey, what are you up to tomorrow?" Because we were near where she goes to school, where she goes to college. I said, "Do you want to hang out?" And she said, "Yeah, I have an event, a career fair that I'm going from 10 to 2. And our thing was right in the middle of it. So I think the day before, whenever it was, I texted you and I said, "Hey, family stuff came up. Can we reschedule?" And you were like, "Absolutely. Family comes first." And so I love spending time with my kids and I will prioritize that. But at the same time, when they're very little, you do need to be strategic about quiet time, taking them to the gym, like giving yourself a little carve out, not a lot, but enough that you can not be so tired all the time because it makes you crazy, like you're drunk. And trying to
mhm.
drive a car when you're drunk, try to raise kids when you're drunk. It's just, it's not safe, it's not healthy, and just being able to prioritize that is really, really important. Tell me about, because you mentioned some challenges. They're in a closet, they're in a laundry room, and people would find out I would do that kind of stuff. And they'd be like, "Oh, your baby's crib is in your closet or your laundry room or whatever." And I always felt a little bit of shame there when I was just figuring out creatively how to get it done. How did you handle that with just finding a place to put everybody?
Our first house, we were just like, we are so blessed and grateful to actually have a house with this giant backyard. We didn't think we could afford a house like that early in our financial journey. So that one is, I don't care if the bedroom is 10 by 10 square feet. Yay, we have a bedroom. The door shuts. There's room for a toddler bed in addition. This is good. And then when I was pregnant with kid number 4, we moved to a bigger house. And then it was okay, laundry rooms with doors that close and they have lights built in. I can see how this is going to work because if I need a space for each individual child for a couple hours a day, and if my space is in the living room, I need to be able to tell someone, yes, you can be in mommy's room. Yes, you can be in the laundry room, and then rotate who gets to be in the room that they share with the sibling. So to me, it was more like, wow, isn't this great? Because I would have originally looked at a house floor plan and said, ah, isn't this inefficient? Or why did they have to design it like this? Instead, I could say, what we need is a space with a door. Look, it has a space with a door. So think of the positive instead of the negative.
Exactly. And then did you ever get those feelings of, and maybe being homeschooled yourself, you didn't struggle with as much of this as I did, but just especially having my kids in school and facing a lot of judgment from the admin and the teachers and feeling like I had to hide what I was really doing because people are going to be listening to that thinking, what was she doing that was so wrong? But just things, I'm not going to help my kid with his homework. 6-year-olds shouldn't have homework. We're not doing homework. And so that attitude got me in a lot of trouble. And I felt like I just had to keep it to myself. I don't know. Did you struggle with that at all from
Some, yes,
parents?
especially like older, because I never did a homeschool co op. Everybody, as soon as they hear you're homeschooling, it's why aren't you in a co op? The straight up answer that I thought was rude and didn't want to say was because I'm an introvert and I hate driving on interstates, and I'm not going to spend hours driving that and then taking all life for younger kids and entertaining them somehow while the older says, yay, friends, goody. I'm going to prioritize me and the way our family day flows. And unfortunately, that means being a homebody. And on second thought, it's not unfortunate. I like it. So tough luck.
Yes, people don't seem to understand sometimes. Like being a homebody is a choice. I like being at home. I like not commuting. At the same time, though, it's funny that you mentioned that because when I did my business internships, because I went back to school when I was 40. So I had an associate's degree in business from when I was like 20. And then I went back when I was like 37 or so just to finish my bachelor's degree. And so I had two business internships. And one of them I commuted to the Chase Tower downtown for 4 months, every single day, my husband and I working in the same building, in the same office even, and would commute together. And I thought, I love this. I love the structure of being in an office. When you're here, you do this, right? He was right there. If we wanted to go get lunch together, we drove together. And then the second internship, I worked at a small office on the south part of town, and I would go in there and spend basically 8 hours a day, commute in, do my thing, pack my little lunch. Like, I actually loved that because I'd never experienced it before. And I'm such a homebody that it was very different and I was productive in a very different kind of way. So I think that's one way to just kind of look at the pros and cons and trade offs and sometimes maybe even getting out of our shell. Did you end up doing the co op eventually?
No, never have. But like you, I did really enjoy my internship experience of the office, be social, very different, come back home. Yeah,
Yes.
that was fun.
It's like a switch you can turn on and off. And I
Yeah.
find that it's harder to do that at home.
And hence why you need that 2-hour gym membership or something. Because 30
Yeah.
minutes of scrolling on your phone does not count. We need to actually get out of the norm or else you'll be like, oh, yes, sure, kids, you can come along. Oh, I'm using the
Oh, goodness. I think I have so much PTSD from that time. I'll give you an example. We went a week ago to clean out a mobile home. My daughters and I bought a mobile home together when they were teenagers, and we've run it together for 5 years. And the tenant recently moved out. He was doing a rent to own and decided he couldn't actually complete it, and he moved out. And we were like, we have to get this thing. Mobile homes take forever to sell, so we had to get it back on the market as quick as possible. And I was freaking out, panicking. I was like, you two daughters have to come with me because this is your mobile home and we have to find a time all three of us can go. And I'm thinking, I'm going to have to do everything myself because kids, right? And they're just in your way and they're whining and they're hungry and they don't work hard. And I don't know if I can do this whole thing by myself, just panicking. We get there, they're 18 and 21, right? That's ridiculous. Why was I feeling that way? I hardly did anything. They did almost the entire thing. And it was fast too. We brought my husband and we just got trash bags and a dumpster and we just went for it. And I didn't actually have to do that much work. And I remember sitting there thinking, not only are my kids no longer a deterrent, they're actually doing the work now, yet I'm still having the same PTSD kind of anxiety response of doing that kind of stuff with my kids. There's going to be a lot of whining, there's going to be a lot of distraction. I don't know. Are your kids old enough that you can look back on that and be like, wow,
Yes,
that's
I'm still doing the
fun.
same thing. Like it's you said, the PTSD. Only for me, it's like when you're supposed to host the extended family friend, cook the meal for 16 people,
Yeah.
and prep. And I'm every time it's our turn to host and our kids' birthday parties, I'm like, "Mm," and it's wait. Remember the last time you did this? I've got 2 teenagers and a preteen, and younger people who also like to cook and are fairly helpful. I can just say, you're responsible for cooking this. You're responsible for cooking this. I will do this part. Go set tables, go fill cups, go put out napkins. Here is the menu copy pasted from last year. Like, I am not doing it all. I'm doing 20% of it. And it is no big deal anymore. It's okay. Self, remember, you delegate, you outsource everything in your home life. This happens for holiday outings too. It's okay.
Yeah, same thing. We went skiing a couple months ago. I got everybody a family ski trip for Christmas. They love skiing, and my kids are homebodies and they don't really like athletics. So they all love skiing. So I'm going to facilitate that. And I hurt my back at the gym really bad a couple days before we went. And I could not stand up. I could not move. I could not walk. And I was really stuck in the car on so much painkiller. I went and I just sat in the hotel, lying on the bed. And I remember thinking, oh, this vacation's gonna be totally ruined and then nobody's gonna know how to get to the slopes or find the and I'm like, my oldest is almost 27 years old. My husband is there. I literally sat in the hotel for 3 days while everybody else skied and they did great. I could literally have not gone and they would have done great. And so that
Well,
has been because my youngest is 12, that has been very slow for me to come around and be like, I'm no longer at war. I'm no longer in the trenches. I forget. It's almost like this flashback type of experience.
yeah, we remember every time when the kids see their cousins because they're still infants. And yeah, did my time. Don't want to go back. I'm not volunteering to babysit. No, thank you. No, how? I don't need 3 under 3.
Right. And I'm doing the same thing. I told somebody the other day her little baby was walking around and she couldn't get to what she was supposed to be at. And I said, half of me wants to offer you some help and take this baby so you can go do the thing that you're here to do. I said, but the other half, like if I'm looking back, like one thing I regret was allowing other people to help me with my children. I needed more help with my housework. I needed more help with my business. But I wish that I could take back all the times that I accepted help for my children and spend more time just watching them toddle around and so cute. And they're like, "Oh, enjoy it while it lasts because it doesn't last very long." But it's true. It goes by really fast. And so the housework can go, the business can go, everything can go, except that's the one non-negotiable for me. And I'm glad I realized it before my youngest was 12 that I really got to say when she's sleeping and she's being beautiful and I'm just going to hold her and people say, "Oh, you'd like me to hold your baby?" I'm like, "I'm good. I'm holding my own baby. Thank you."
That's nice when you have that many kids. You do get that bit of that do-over
Yeah.
parenting.
That's a good way to put it. The do-over. Definitely. Because I think when I say, "Oh, you got to go to the gym or you got to have quiet time and all that's very important. But at the same time, so is enjoying when they're being cute and fun and
Mhm.
sleepy or all of those things and just really taking the time out to enjoy that. Let's talk about expanding this philosophy over to, let's say, your customers, for example. I'll give you a hypothetical. You're a stay-at-home mom, maybe homeschooling, maybe not. And she calls you out and she says, "Hey, I'm working my little part-time business. I really want to help our investing more." And so I'm trying to keep it on a kind of investing focus because a lot of the women who invest with us are struggling to find time. They've got to learn how to read the financials, the performas, all of that, and they're just keep procrastinating it. So they reach out to someone like you and they're like, "I have some goals. I want to grow my business. I want to grow my portfolio, and I still want to be here and present for my family." How do you take these experiences that you had and put them on somebody else's situation because they're so unique and help them develop systems around reaching their goals?
I've got the 3 pillars of scheduling, mindset, and delegation. So when you're sitting there going, I don't know if I can make it all fit, this is where I come in. I usually help them look at the scheduling, like how much time do your kids, your house need from you? Where are you going to find the time for looking at the investments and studying up on all this? And where is the time for your homeschooling or your side hustle going? Let's lay it all out in your calendar because if you have a plan and it's realistic and doable, even on the bad days, then great, you're set. But then number 2, the mindset that says, I am an investor now. This is part of me. It's identity level. Therefore, it has to show up in my calendar. It has to show up in my plan. And number 3, your delegation, because no, you cannot do it all. Okay, if you're single, sure. We have kids, we're not. So what can you train your kids to do? What can you get someone else to do, like a VA for your business? Do you want your husband to flip through some of the financials or tell you page such and such is a really good summary? Read that. And then anything else you've got questions on, we can go back and look at the main thing. It's saying, okay, I hear all your goals. I hear all your want tos, but which of those are shoulds and which of those are actual priorities? Because if you can connect the investment to a dream, you're far more likely to sit down and read up and study and research everything than if you're just like, it'd be nice to be able to say we're real estate investors, but you know what? I guess it's not that important.
Yeah, put your money where your mouth is. If it was really important, you would get it done. But yet at the
Uh-huh.
same time, we have to figure out how to get it done because
Yes.
that overarching plan of I am a wife, I am a mother, I am a business owner, or whatever the career identity is, and I am an investor, whether it's real estate investing or it's just managing your portfolio, whatever it is, I am an investor. And having that identity level and really drilling down into why, like, why do you want to even do this? Why
Mhm.
is it even important? Once you drill down to that and you have that burning level, why? Mine was my husband kept getting laid off. Honestly, like I had to do something because I couldn't keep putting our family in the situation where I had one person earning an income for the 7 other people because my side hustle was just like hobby level money, and it was enough for piano lessons and some vacations and things like that, but it wasn't enough to support the family if we lost that major source of income. We did a post the other day, it was a Napoleon Dynamite, and he's wearing the T-shirt, it says "Vote for Pedro," but I crossed it out and I said, "Vote for Troy." I felt like for years, that is what we were doing, we were just putting all of our eggs in the Troy basket, and it was very irresponsible, and so for me, that kind of light bulb moment when he got laid off and we were panicking, I realized I have not been using my time between the last layoff and this layoff very wisely, and I have not been getting prepared. So once I really got that why down, it's important for each listener to figure out what that is. What would be the first thing you would do once they get the burning desire, it lights up, and they have that identity level? I am now going to make as much money as my husband or whatever. What's next?
What's next is usually that brain dump. Okay, what are all the things you're thinking of doing? Do you feel like you're on the hook for doing? Because until you can get all that brain jumble and mess out of your brain, that's you can be feeling overloaded and also probably like you have too many different directions to go that could be good for making money. Like we need to narrow in, focus down, essentialize, prioritize, but it really helps to have that wider, giant, like Google Doc first or the journal page and cross out and star and highlight like crazy. And maybe that's not something I do with the client. Maybe it is. It depends. Like sometimes they're real processors and they really want to talk it all the way out. But it's having the smaller list of, okay, you know what? These are 10 different ways to make money. I'm only really interested in two or three. I am now only going to research those three and then I'm going to pick one. Instead of saying, oh, there's so many different good things. What would be best for a family? No, action, decision is a lot better than picking the quote unquote ideal perfect. So
Mhm.
just look into a couple of them. That will be good enough. You will be far better, way further ahead than all the other people who said, well, I have to get it perfect, like perfect investment fee.
Yeah, I think this is a concept I learned from real estate development, actually. My first ground up building, it was a couple of warehouses and a duplex in downtown Salt Lake City. And we were looking at these properties and we're trying to figure out like what we're going to do because it's zoned for this. We could tear it down. We could build this. We could build that. We could do residential with this, just some commercial opportunities. And there's so many options, right? And we call it highest and best. And because they call it highest and best, there's this kind of drive in real estate development to figure out like what is the highest and best use of this property where we're going to make the most amount of money ratio per expense going in and all this. But then there's a level of experience. And it was funny when I started talking to other developers, like, what would you do? I have this project sitting here. What would you do with it? They all had different answers on what they thought the highest and best was. And it was based on their experience going after the low hanging fruits and then developing that skill over time. And then they become an expert at it. It wasn't because they tried all the things, they were just grabbing the things that were there. And that highest and best became extremely subjective. And I realized, you know what? I'm going to build what I think will do well here, but I'm not going to get over my skis trying to build something here that I'm completely unqualified to be doing and chasing every single option and underwriting every shiny object because I, at a certain point, need to be practical and based on what I'm personally capable of doing. So that highest and best, yes, can be this alluring thing, but at the same time, it also really hold us back from doing anything.
It's like there's always a do-over. Maybe not that building, but the next project. You can say, okay,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm pivoting my business here. Okay, I'm not offering that service anymore. You're
Yeah.
not stuck.
Just being able to look back and say, I will regret things about this project, I'm sure. And that's okay.
It's for learning. And I will never learn and get to that level of being experienced if I don't step out now. And no, I'm going to make mistakes and say, you know what? It's okay. I accept.
Yes. And what's the same thing I noticed with a lot of investors, especially our nervous investors. And our most nervous investors tend to be the non breadwinner of the couple. So even when I'm talking to a husband, my wife makes three times as much as me. He feels like he needs to honor her ability to make that income by not wasting it, by not losing it. Right. And so they have this fear of loss, a fear of losing money, especially losing the spouse's money that holds them back from being able to make any kinds of decisions other than just an index fund in the stock market. That's the easy button, right? Everybody should do that. But at a certain point, you're like, okay, how much do I want to reallocate out of there into these private markets, this real estate stuff, and be okay with making mistakes, being okay with chalking it up to learning experience, and be okay with occasionally losing money as long as you make eventually in the long term make more than you lost, you're good. But that holds so many people back from just even getting started. How do you handle the fear of loss or the fear of making mistakes?
It's such a psychological thing, isn't it? It's like I'll put like the mindset component of my pillars is for because no matter how good the plan is, no matter how well you think you've set yourself up for success, the best strategy ever, like you've done all the research, when push comes to shove and you're down in the trenches, and you're like, can I pull back? I'm not ready for this. And you go straight back to your old pattern.
Yeah.
That's when you realize, okay, the new identity, I'm an investor, I'm the business owner, it hasn't fully sunk in yet. Like, I'm not taking all the actions I should be. And you have to work through the uncomfortableness of often like journal, God, coach, something of, I feel this when I do this. If I take that action, I know the real investor would, I know the real developer would, but I am scared of X, Y, and Z. And you have to run through like favorite exercises, the five whys. Why am I scared of that? Could mean this. Okay, why is that a bad thing? Of course. And you keep running down. And eventually, I mean, you do so much psychological excavation on this. And eventually you get down to one of those layers and you're like, is that true though? Or is that the programming I got from my family about money or being careful with money growing up? And if that isn't true, what do I want to be true? And then you can start to reshape.
Okay. So 5 layers of why I love, but I've noticed that people don't start crying until 7 layers of why.
Yeah,
Which
sometimes 5 isn't enough, but
sometimes, but usually I feel like by the time you get to the 7th, that's when the waterworks turn on for men and women. I've done this exercise many times at masterminds or with my own investing club. And it's fascinating to see what comes out of it. And for me, after I dug and dug and dug and dug, and I got to that 5 layers of why, it's this iterative process where you have to keep going back to the reason why. We talk about the why has to be the umbrella and then all the
Mhm.
whats are below it. But no, it's taking turns like, oh, I have this why and I want it to be this way. Then when you go 7 layers of why on each one of those, you realize, oh, maybe I need to go back and revise the plan.
It
It's
really is
cool.
cyclical, like, you can't just
Yeah.
say, "One and done. I did the 7 wise once, I'm good, I'm fine." No.
Definitely. It's like saying, oh, eventually I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work so hard I never have to go to the gym again. It's never going away. Okay, let's look at this from the standpoint of somebody who's doing something very different than your experience. So you're here in time management and you have somebody say, I want to become a real estate developer. And you're like, I don't know anything about real estate development. How do you help somebody plan out their lives and their business and the tasks they need to accomplish if it's outside of your wheelhouse of experience?
Then, since I'm not the real estate mentor and coach, I'm just a time person. I say, "Okay, you tell me, what do you feel like you need to get started? What's that first project you're aiming?" As soon as we have that project list, we can break it down into the next action steps, assign priority levels, look at, okay, how much time do you actually have freed up in your day? Is that enough to meet this on this timeline? Do we need to start sourcing something from the get go? Do we need to gather a bunch of research first? Getting started will be pretty quick with your investment, but you need to know a lot of the groundwork first. What all has to happen? Because a lot of things can be looked at from a project standpoint. So checklists and order levels and all these different things. And like, hey, this is moving little pieces around. It's puzzles. It's fun. It's like organization decluttering, but it's time, it's calendar, it's productivity.
We talked about this in an interview I did recently with the CEO of a professional sports company. And he said, we were talking about different kinds of coaches. And I know I've talked about this before on lots of my interviews with sports people. They're like, you've got the forwards coach, you've got the back coach, you've got the head coach, and then you've got the general manager, and then you've got the CEO. And they all do something a little bit differently. Where do you fit into that coach hierarchy? Let's use the real estate developer example. You're going to come in, you're going to help with work-life balance, you're going to help with figuring out priorities, mapping out projects. But at a certain point, you're like, you probably need a real estate development
Yeah.
coach. Where does that fit in? I know a lot of times we have multiple coaches working together that have different philosophies and they can clash a little bit. So how do you make that work?
Either I prefer to be the person who says, okay, you've got the head strategist, so your business strategist, your real estate mentor, like the person who's saying, okay, for you, what you want, your portfolio, you need to go here and do this and this. So I am the person under that saying, now let me help you execute on this practically
Right.
because your mentor expects you to be able to deal with the project management. Or I'm the person helping the person who says, I don't have that kind of support right now. I'm either just coasting for now what I know or preparatory to hiring someone. They're
Okay.
working with me. And I'm like, okay, this is about as far as I can take you. I can scale you this far, but because I am not the expert and I do not know everything, I am going by what you tell me you want to do. And that may not be the right choice for where you actually want to go. You don't have the experience. I don't have the experience. So at a certain point, I may say, maybe you should work with the launch strategist. Maybe you should go look at getting a license for that. I can only help you to the level of what my level is on like the time management, the work life balance. I can't tell you, hey, you need to get out of this market entirely and go over it. That's not my business. I'm not going to advise you to do. I can say, you're getting super stressed by this. What do we need to put in place to lower your stress level? But
Yeah.
if that's not the right area of property for you to be in the first place, that's something you're going to have to get another expert at the same time.
You must get a lot of exposure to a lot of different kinds of businesses and investing philosophies. I mean,
It's fun.
like the real estate developer thing, let's toss that out the window. I know very few like homeschool, stay at home moms, or really anybody who wants to actually do that. Maybe some people in my real estate club. Let's dial it back a little bit to somebody more typical that we're helping every single day. Somebody who wants a passive investing portfolio. And we send over some documents and they're like, what even is this? Because one thing is investing your time, right? Let's make a priority. I'm going to get a coach. I'm going to do the things. But when you're looking at a pro forma or a prospectus And like, I need to put in $50,000 or $100,000 into this one investment. And you're like, I have no clue what I'm looking at. How can somebody in that situation where now they got to put some money down, now they got to commit and make the investment or hire the coach or whatever it is? Talk me through how you talk someone through that process. He's like, I'm super nervous about this.
That's where, again, 5 whys, it's really useful in a lot of situations. Like, okay, where is the nervousness coming from? What specifically are you afraid of happening here? Because that's usually, you're not, people can be nervous of success, yes, but there's a bad thing you're afraid of. Are you afraid that you, right up front, you don't have the skills to understand the perspectives? Or is it, I feel like I need an associate's degree to figure out all of this? Are you worried about the relationship aspect? What's my husband going to think if I'm telling him, I think we ought to do X, Y, and Z, and I really do not agree with you? And here's why. And you're suddenly changing the power balance on the money side of the relationship. What is actually going on? Because just saying, "Oop, I don't know, I got cold feet," that is an excuse.
Yeah, that's not good enough. I'm not
Mhm,
saying every prospectus or pro forma that you look at, you have to figure out a way to get to the point where you're gonna go ahead and wire over 5 figures. But at the same time, it's like you have to have a reason to say yes or no, this is not a good fit, and it needs to be based on data, not fear. So,
mhm.
if you're reading through the prospectus and you just don't understand the business plan or you don't know how to read the numbers, you got the communication problem. That's an issue. I need to spend some more time learning the numbers side of this business. I think this is a good deal. I'm pretty sure it's a good deal, but I don't have any experience. And so I'm terrified that I don't know what I don't know. Again, it's like you have to get to like, why do you want to do this? And why do you not want to do this? And are they good reasons for walking away, not just fear? That's going to be more unique to everybody. I think that's where a coach really comes in, is because you can tailor your approach to each individual person in each individual situation.
Yes, I can't tell you how many times having a coach has helped me, and whether it's homeschooling or business, something about the life or the marriage. It's, I don't know everything because I haven't lived enough, or I haven't lived long enough, or I haven't lived through this age of kid or this kind of financial decision. Someone else has. Get someone that you respect who has been there. If nothing else, to say, this is the story of what happened when I went through that. You don't have to take what they say, but hearing it, a story, any story, you need that to add to part of your learn from other people thing. And then you
Yeah.
can say, I like what they did, or I don't like what they did, or I like that and I have more questions. Now you have a route for what to do next.
Yeah, and I like the elimination and delegation thing you were talking about. I've actually found like single parents, most people who have really small kids are probably still married, but a lot of our investors actually are single parents. I find them to be masters of delegation and elimination, just saying what is really important here. What are we going to get rid of? Because there's this realization of being a single parent. I've never done it before, and I've seen, so there's this realization like, I'm a single parent and I need to figure this out. There's no more hiding, making excuses, try to like take hold of that and say, this is really important. It has to happen, but I don't necessarily need to be the one to do it. So that delegation and elimination portion is very strong with single parents. And sometimes they even have a hard time when they remarry later, being able to say, oh, I don't have to do everything by myself. Oh, there is somebody here I can delegate to and make these joint decisions with. And it definitely changes it. So, how does this kind of stuff? We're talking a lot about mom and kids, but let's talk about relationships, either being single, remarriage, or just having been married to the same person all along. Factor into strengthening or deepening a relationship when you're going through these kinds of decision processes.
It's interesting you say that because I like to use the book Fair Play, which is about chores and bringing up like unspoken contracts, but then interpret that into more relationship or decision making. Do you have something that you go to every time you make a financial decision? Are you always calling up your dad? Or on the flip side, do you feel like you have fear around letting a man into your financial process? What if he walks all over me and takes my money again? Can we lay out some of these things in an orderly fashion? Okay, here are all the financial decisions that tend to go on in my life. In what ones am I okay with outsourcing? Am I okay with sending someone to the grocery store and saying they do not have to call me if they don't have the exact item on my list, and I will trust them to make the right decision? Or am I like, it has to be this kind of thing and I have to give out these parameters and whatnot? These are things we can uncover, we can work on, or we can have conversations behind the scenes, values aligned. Honey, we're really trying to save for this important family vacation. We want the memories. We want to be the kind of people who take one every year, twice a year, 3 times a year. And so when there isn't something, that exact item on the list, I need you to either find a cheaper option or come home without it and say, okay, you got to be creative with your recipe. What is the value? Was it saving the money for another purpose? Was it, let's be experiential, let's try new foods, and spending a little money on that is fine. Like, what all is going on? Because it's not just a, I don't like it when someone else butts in. It's because you're feeling a lack of safety with them and their priorities. And that just maybe hasn't risen to the conscious level of your mind yet.
Yeah. And this brought up a lot of thoughts just back to homeschooling. It's like, I've learned that I cannot control my children, especially as adults. I think one of the best books I've read on that is Doing Life with Your Adult Kids. It's like the subtitle is Keeping Your Mouth Shut and the Welcome Mat Out.
Who
And
sounds like a good read?
it's a pretty good read. And I feel like, especially it's written from a Christian perspective. And I liked how he said, what if your child is doing something that you don't agree with from a moral standpoint? And one of the examples, he says, what if your daughter comes home and says, I married a woman? Do you go to the wedding? Do you give her a hard time about this? Or how do you handle this? And the supposition from this very Christian therapist basically was go to the wedding and support your kid and keep your mouth shut because it's not your life. And if you want to be part of that kid's life, you have to decide what's more important that my kid lives my moral values or that I have a relationship with my kid. Nonviolent communication was another book that taught me that same concept. I cannot control people. And that has helped me be able to delegate in investing and be more of a passive investor. I know a lot of people in the last few years have been burned in the commercial real estate market and their deals are not performing and they're feeling stupid because they invested in this thing and now it's not doing as well as they hoped. And it's a lesson in how to give up control because do you really want to go back to owning your own rental houses and running your own real estate business and all that? Like the answer is frankly no. Yet at the same time, I was not able to delegate control over the education and the psychological education of my children to the public school system. And so that realization, I don't try to control my kids. I don't control every dollar that leaves into an investment. I just diversify and do the best I can. But I wasn't willing to leave up that control to people who had a genuinely different value system than I had. And I don't just mean religious, I just mean political, psychological, just butting heads on so many different issues. So knowing where you need to give up control and where you refuse to give up control and do yourself is very important when you're making these kinds of decisions. So, do you have any examples of that you can from your own life or from a confidential client's life that have been like that? Here's where you need to learn to let go, and here's where you need to learn how to drill down.
I'd almost go back to the unschooling and homeschooling because that is like the master class in saying, I cannot control my kids. I cannot make them learn this. I cannot make them care about this.
Yep.
And I've had to be okay with that. And it took months and months. I was starting to wonder if I was ever going to graduate from being worried about unschooling into just letting the process go because of that. Yes, but I need to make sure that they live up to their potential and get a good job.
I
Like,
need to make sure my mother-in-law thinks I'm doing a good job. Let's face
yeah,
it, that's what it's really about.
yes.
I need to make sure that my neighbor or my kids' coaches or whatever think that they're well educated because they have to be outstanding. Can you
Mhm.
imagine a public school kid walking into a homeschool situation and the homeschoolers all going, what year was the Declaration of Independence signed? And seeing that public school kid learned, but people do that to our homeschool kids
Uh-huh.
all the time and they think that it's okay. And I
Yes.
realized like I am being caught in the same trap, needing to prove that my homeschool kids are just as
Mhm.
well educated. And then sometimes they're not. It's very uneven. Their development could be way out of scale over here, and then they're not getting a lot over here. And I had to get okay with that. The anxiety and the guilt of not performing to other people's standards and letting those kinds of things go. And that's translated over to my investing portfolio. Like my portfolio is very unique to me, my goals, my situation. And with hanging out with so many other investors and all their ideas on invest, I've had to just remember back to that experience of this is how I'm homeschooling my kids. And if you don't like it, they're not your kids. I reserve the right to screw up my kids according to my own judgment. So those types of character development things of just learning what's really important and stop worrying about what everybody else is thinking have helped me so much in business and investing.
Yeah, it's like whatever side you learn it first, the investment, the family, whatever, you have to learn that lesson until you're able to say, maybe not without fear, but you're willing to say, I have different priorities than you in that kid's education, and it's fine. Like, you're not raising them, I am, and we've made the right choice, what we consider best. Then you still have work to do.
Yes. It's like you said, it's not ever without fear,
Mhm,
but it's with an ability to face the consequences of
mhm.
the downsides of the choice that you've made because there are no solutions. There are only pros and cons. And so you have to
Yes.
say, can I live with the cons, whether from design, the way this whole thing is laid out has cons, or because I've made a mistake and then I have to experience the con. If I'm willing to accept the consequences of this path of action, then you're ready to move forward.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about before we get into like kind of some of your personal goals. We always ask at the end where you're working towards in your own business, your own lifestyle design, financial freedom goals, things like that. But before we move on to that, let's talk about when to give something up. And this has really been something that I've only learned how to do maybe in the last 6 or 7 years, where I would complain to my husband all the time. He'd come home and be very embarrassed that the house was messy. And not that he cared, like I cared more than he did, right? But it was very embarrassing that I cared so much about it, yet I was letting it go. And he would hear me say, "Oh, I'm going to volunteer for this thing and I'm going to teach that co op and I'm going to start a business doing this." And when I started my real estate business, the same thing. We were homeschooling, got a lot going on. When I went back to college, he was like, "Why are you taking on this stress? I don't understand it." And he thought that if I gave all of these things up, that then I would have more time to clean the house. And one day I realized like I was going through, should I stop teaching? Should I stop volunteering? Should I cut back on business? Should I what? And then I would have more time to clean the house. And then I realized like I ain't cleaning the house. Like I don't want to clean the house. I'm taking on all of this so that I have a good excuse to not have to clean the house. And I said, no matter what I give up, it's not going to result in cleaning the house. And that introspection in that process where I realized like I didn't have to give things up because it was just like this mournful process of all of these, how I'd over extended myself. Instead, what I had to do was give up the idea that my house was going to be very clean all the time. And that's what I gave up. And it lasted for probably 5, 8 years of just whatever, right? Like as long as everybody's safe and fed, we don't care if it looks like Pinterest. So, how do you guide people through that process of if they have taken on too much, their ambitions have outstripped their time or their abilities? How do you walk through that process?
There's a lot of just like tough love. Okay, here's what your calendar says. Here's what your to do list says. And it's not meeting up. So you've got to pick something to drop. You can't have everything be a sacred cow. So tell me what you're willing to let go of for this season. That's an
Okay.
easier way to get around it than for good permanent.
Oh, yeah, I guess it's kinda like when you have a bunch of little kids and you have hobbies. You
Mhm.
like you like to read, you like to paint, whatever, and you give those things up, and then you're worried that you're never gonna come back to it, though. What if I
Mhm.
don't have time to play the piano anymore when my kids are older, or I just don't like it anymore? You might be giving it up for good.
For that one, I always make sure you like it's a require to have the self-care hobby time. So now we're talking about to-do list expectations or how clean is the state of my house expectations or how much quality time spent and how many outings with my kids expectations. But if this is so necessary that your kids go on field trips to museums every single Saturday, do you have anyone you can delegate some of that to? Do they
Mm.
have the grandparent? Do you have a school friend? Is there any other way for them to get that? Because usually it's not a black and white. Either I stress myself out to do this or it's gone for good and it may never come back and I have to be okay with that. There's almost always some sort of workaround. Your kid needs to get to school, but could you have a carpool rotation with other parents? Could you ask your husband, can he manage to drive them? And he works late and you're okay with it? Do you need to try a bit of the homeschooling or the online school? Or what different ways can we arrange this? What is actually going to happen if you don't get to the 19 different things on your personal project to do list? Is it actually going to break your house to these levels of I have to fix the washing machine? We have no ability to wash clothes indoors? Or is this a I really feel like I ought to repaint the front because it's looking saggy and yes, and could you say that doesn't matter right now? That's not a priority right now. And look, you can even save it on a someday maybe list for later, just in case you ever forget.
Yeah.
And say, I'm not doing it. I'm not dealing with it. Or my favorite, if I ever get bored, I can go do that. Are you actually going to get so bored you're going to pull out the honey-do list for yourself? I don't think.
I know sometimes I'll just go buy the paint. In there, I got all the stuff. I make a little kit, and then, yeah, it happens. When COVID happened, I painted my entire house. I got all the stuff already because I was planning on it. I was like, suddenly, I knitted a lot of hats and I painted a lot of houses. So I think that exercise of the 7 layers of why, it's like, why do you want to do so many of these things have good reason? Kind of like a scale of 1 to 10, like with my husband and I. It's like, how much do you care about this? And I'm like a 4. I'm like an 8. He goes, you win. I win more than he because I tend to care more than he cares, but he wins when he really cares. And that's all that matters is that when it's really important to him and it's less important to me. I don't have to be right all the time. And just being able to go through on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want this thing? I'm like, I want a 10, my house to be spotless, but I'm like a 1 in wanting to do it myself. So I
Mhm.
just kind of had to let it go. I ended up hiring a housekeeper, another homeschool mom, because I was looking at helping with childcare, like a mother's helper, a nanny to come in a few days a week so I could clean my own house. And I was like, I'd rather hang out with my kids, honestly, than clean my own house. And so she was a single parent and she would bring her kids with her to work. And I just loved being able to help her make a living while her kids were too young to stay home alone. And so until she could go back to work at her career job, make ends meet while her kids were really little. And our kids would play together and she would clean my house at least once a week. I knew she was coming in. And so what you're talking about, these creative solutions oftentimes happen in such amazing ways. Like that relationship that I developed with her over that time and how much she saved me during those years of just coming in once a week and just helping me keep my house under control. And I got a little side job to pay for it because I'd rather do the side job than clean my own house. And so just keeping an open mind. I love that perspective. All right, move us forward to your own future. You have so much of the time freedom thing. You're running your own business. You've got your kids homeschooled. And then now it's just kind of, okay, what are we going to do next to increase our level of time and location freedom that homeschooling and time management is so important to doing?
We have basically all the time location freedom we want. And we have a big level of financial freedom. What I'd like is to next level. So the kind of thing that says, okay, if my husband got laid off, we had to move anywhere in the country, we could go buy a house, pay cash, like no
Right.
mortgage ever again. Would that be nice? Yes. What about, I think you said in the show's intro, like the philanthropy about giving back to communities? What if we could do that on a large scale? Wouldn't it be neat to write five-figure checks just because, as opposed to even we scrimp and save all year, put it in one charitable account. We can write one end of year check that technically is 5 figures. Like, what about the $50,000? Oh, yeah, we got to fund.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what would be fun.
What does your husband do as far as does he commute? Is he working online? How much of that tied to a particular job or tied to a particular location factors into your future plans?
Not really, because he can work remote and most anywhere. He just needs an internet. He's an engineer.
Perfect. Yeah. So you've really been able to put your life and kind of create these levels, like you said, of time and location freedom, and then managing your money wisely so that you can have a lot more options and choices.
Yep. That's okay. Let's launch the kids well. All right. Money for education or whatever plays into that. But beyond that, like, what's next? We don't want to stay stagnant.
Yes, but we like being homebodies.
Oh,
So
that too.
yeah, how does that factor in? Because a lot of people talk about traveling and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I love to move. I like actually living places. I don't like traveling places for short periods of time because I feel like it's too hectic, it's too stressful, and I can't be a homebody while I'm there because we're only here for 2 weeks and we have to get it all in.
Yeah. So definitely homebody. So not moving sounds sure. We need to move one more time because like we got to downsize. You don't need a house this big. It's crazy when they're all gone. But if the business is scaled to such a level that kind of philanthropy is possible, I'm like, the company might look different, number of employees, structure, this, that, and the other. That's going to be a whole learning, self development masterclass. I can't see how it wouldn't be a next level for me. And then for my husband, if we're like, okay, now we have to look at what needs to be doing in the community, church, globally, whatever, in stewardship financially. And then I don't know, like we're not committing to give money to our kids. We're just saying it will now be an option if we wish to assist them with their first car or something like that.
Exactly. And then tell me about your midterm business plans for Unbusy.
I don't know how long it'll take to get there. I think it would be really fun to hit that 500,000 revenue mark. Why? I don't know. It just sounds fun.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like sometimes the business consumes you. Is Unbusy more of a lifestyle business, or is it like I have a mission to help 1,000 people, and I've got to grow this as big as I can, as fast as I can, because I have a mandate to help as many people as I can? Or is this has to work around my family, around our lifestyle?
I'd say lifestyle because I have that drive for
Mhm.
the other part, but I'm not willing to stress myself out to get change as many women's lives and their families as possible by de-stressing them and giving them all their time back. But it cannot be done by me, the teacher, getting all stressed out. Like myself and my own 5 kids come first.
Yeah, that's like me telling people, "Oh, you should invest for early retirement, but my husband still has a W-2 and I'm scrapping around in my business, and we don't actually know if this works because we don't
Mhm.
really do it ourselves, but you should do it. Passive income's great."
Yeah.
I walk around, gotta eat your own dog food. Honestly, and I hate
Mhm.
to call investing dog food, but it's not easy. Building a business is not easy, but at the same time, you have to do it in a way that is in line with what you teach.
Yes. And hey, I know some of my kids are like, I don't know. We think it'd be fun to start businesses too. Good for you. I can set you on the right path.
Yes. We asked my nieces and nephews one time about their mom. We said, describe your mom in one word. And I was thinking to myself, bubbly, cheerful. Those were the words I would have used to describe her. And her kids all looked at each other like, stressed. I was like, really? I don't see that side of her at all. And I asked my kids later, I got home and I said, see, I have an experiment for you. Describe me in one word. And they all did the same thing. They're like, stressed. I'm like, why? Why are I thought that I was, like, living my best life and doing my best thing, and so it really made me look a little bit harder. What do you think your kids, if they had to describe you in one word, what would it be?
I don't think they pick the stress.
That's good.
Or quiet.
Quiet, organized? I don't know.
Yeah.
I would want if I had an aspirational word that my kids would use to describe me, it would be playful. What would yours be? If you could program it in and say, "I'm gonna live in a way that this is what people see about me," what would it be?
Maybe like nurturing in the sense of help your talents and abilities bloom.
That's funny because Emma actually that's what it means is nurturing. I'm not so good at it, but maybe it's an aspirational kind of a name.
Hey,
Very
that's fun too.
yeah, Alyssa, how do people get a hold of you if they need to unbusy their own lives?
I'm going to podcast yourbusylife.com. So we put out episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. They're like under 7 minutes. So you can definitely fit them in your schedule. And then all things LinkedIn. So Alyssa Wolf Unbusy. You'll get the podcast episode, daily work from home mom hacks, audit opportunities, all sorts of good things. And then number three is if you've been teetering on the edge of, okay, there has to be something better for me, for my family, for my kids in this current way of living, the frazzle stress, don't have the time to invest mode. But if you need to know your exact time management gaps and how to bridge them, then I'd like you to fill out a short have it all game plan form for me so that I can send you a custom video. Will lay out what you could do to fix all those schedule gaps. Make sure you're getting the free time, the present mom time, because I think you deserve to have no guilt time for yourself, your kids, and all of your goals, dreams, and priorities starting out, not 5 years down the road. So that's youronbusylife.com/game plan.
Right, okay, that made me think of another question. Just
Okay.
really brief. One thing that really changed the game for me was when I was introduced to Clutterbug, and she had a little quiz to decide what is your organizing personality.
Yes.
It was either micro, macro, covered, or
Yes.
visible. So out of sight, out of mind. Some people struggle with that, so they need everything where they can see it. And being able to figure out which of those you are, because you can pick two. Are you micro, macro, meaning everything has to have its own little spot, or you just toss it in a bin? That made a huge difference for me because I learned that I want things behind closed doors and not seen because my house was messy and it's cluttered and it's very visually cluttered. So I like it behind closed doors and not seen, but I don't want it micro organized. I don't want to have to spend 8 hours putting something away. I want a bin that I can just toss it in there, bigger bins behind doors. And then I was able to say, if I can just do that, right, then my whole house will feel a whole lot cleaner. And I was stopped trying to organize in a way that I thought I should, which was everything in its little cubby or in its little hook. And that really changed. So, do you have anything similar where you've noticed people have a certain type of personality type or time management?
No, it's usually there's just so much external pressure for it.
Mhm.
Like, I need to be type A. I need to schedule everything on 20-minute time blocks. And if I don't, I'm not good enough. And they have this really rigid, structured, harsh
Mhm.
version of what productivity means. And like all productivity is that you hit your priorities for the day and you had time to rest.
Do you find that most people tend to actually be type A or they just think they're supposed to be type A?
Definitely.
How many people are actually type A? Like they thrive on what Fly Lady calls born organized. How many people are actually born organized versus I can't figure this out?
I don't know if it's more like 30% or something like that,
Not
because I do not run into that many people who say, oh, I just love it. I'm one myself. But most people I talk to, that's not them. Or they'll say, I thought I was pre kids. Not anymore.
yeah, and that's interesting that you say that because that was one of Clutterbug's big thing is when she discovered the system was she was trying to help clients. She was a professional organizer trying to
Mhm.
help clients organize their stuff, and she would go and she would organize it, and then she'd come back 3 weeks later, and they're like, "I need a refund because this is not working." She's like, "But I did cut the tabs and the color codes and the things, and why isn't this working?" And then she had to figure out like, oh, people are different. And so in your case, where you come in, let's time organize the way that Alyssa does. And you have to be able to step back and say, there are a lot of ways to do this, and everybody is a little bit different and being open that way.
Yeah. So it mostly comes down to don't create the, what is it, cricket, micro and hidden organizing. Don't do that for time management for other people because very few people can handle it. So you need to find a ladybug or butterfly version of it for the
That's
calendar.
Yeah, I can't remember what bug I actually am, but I just know I like macro hidden.
Okay,
Um,
that's it might be ladybug then because I know ladybug is hidden and I'm a hidden.
because I got wings in that shell. They're big.
No,
It's not so bad like you open a closet door and everything falls out. That's not what we're talking about.
no,
We're talking open the closet. There are large bins labeled. You chuck the thing in there
yeah,
and shut the door. That's how I like to do it. Because I'd rather spend a couple of extra moments looking for it,
origin,
working
yeah,
it on the front end than all that time on the back end putting it away so I can put my hands on it immediately. I'd rather put it away immediately than
mhm,
pull it immediately, if that makes sense. And good
yes,
pay for it with time on either side. You
mhm.
just have which side of that you're willing to pay,
Yeah,
for the
it's whichever one is psychologically easier, which
better.
is the getting
And
it
then
out, not the putting away.
how much of that organization stuff is a part of time management? Because that's a lot. That's very consuming for a lot of us is to get our and now we have digital lives to organize too, which is like extra stuff.
Yes. Well, I did all that first, honestly, before I started my business. I spent a lot of time going through like minimalism, decluttering, the clutter bugs and everything, trying to get all my family and figure out what all the ways they were. And then I was like, okay, I have finally gotten this down and optimized. I cannot just spend all my extra free time doing organizing projects.
Mhm.
So now when clients come to me, we deal with their calendars and all of that. But very often their to-do list includes declutter this, get rid of that. And it's like, okay, we can do it the other way around too. Sure, if a priority for you is getting rid of the clutter, like how much, when is this full on KonMari? Is this a should? You're actually okay with it. You just think that you aren't, or you think your husband isn't. What's going on here? But yes, sometimes I want to tell them, you would have way less housework if you would just tell your kids they're responsible for all the toy pickup or get rid of half their toys. Like it will save you so much time.
Yes, and I think when I first heard KonMari, I was looking at that, never doing that. But then when I the Clutterbug thing, I was like, if I look back at all the organization systems that have worked well for me over the years, they were always what she was describing for that one personality type. I was like, I should just stick with it because the systems exist for us. We don't exist to work around the systems. It's I gained a little bit of weight and now I have to lose weight so I can fit back into my jeans. No, my clothes fit me. I don't make my body fit my clothes. It's the cart before the horse thing. So just thinking about that in those terms, is this serving your life, your goals for your financial, location, and time freedom? Or are you a slave to the system itself? And that's a business lesson right there.
Yes. And if you're constantly beating your head against the wall with whatever time management thing you're trying to live by, it's not the right system for you. Chuck it right.
Find a different one. Yes. Oh, love it. I'm definitely into systematizing, but making very simple systems that are very flexible. That's definitely my personality. Honestly, that's most people's personality. That's probably more typical than 30%, probably like 70% of us tend to like some structure with the ability to be flexible. I love that you're out there able to help people with that. If you need some unbusyness in your life, especially if you are trying to run a business or trying to run an investing portfolio, if you listen to the show, you definitely have been maybe trying to figure out how to get your investing portfolio off the ground, reach out to Alyssa, reach out to me, go to partnerwithrise.com/Emma and get right on my calendar. Free 30 minutes to chat about whatever you want. Like, well, usually it's business and investing, but if you're looking for some resources, I can help hook you up, and I'm sure Alyssa can too. So thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to hear from you about your passive income adventure and how I can help you figure out how you're going to pay for it.